Good morning to my audience in Asia Pacific, and good evening to those in Europe and North America. And welcome to this edition of Minutes with Brett Live. Today is going to be a very special session that I've had numerous requests over the past several months to share some of the key leadership concepts that I've used in my career. And I'll tell you a short story that my career spans many different places around the world, starting in North America, which is where I'm from, and then Asia Pacific, where I spent a number of years, and then in Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. And what I'm going to talk about today applies everywhere. Are there cultural differences? Absolutely. However, the concepts are the same. And these concepts that you're going to hear about today are actually proven to work. Okay. I've implemented these things and they work incredibly well. I spent 30 years in my corporate career. The first 20, I became an expert in management. But I was lacking something: leadership. I quickly learned when I got to the UK that I didn't know anything about leadership. And I'm very grateful to my boss at the time, Mr. Mike Amato, who taught me leadership principles. And we together went on an accelerated learning course for Brett Packard, and it worked incredibly well. So 10 years of knowing, practicing, and sharing leadership. And that 10 years created the pathway in large part that led to my being able to leave the corporate world and be financially independent. So what I'm about to share with you is very powerful. So get out your pens and your notebook. And I hope many of you that regularly watch my program are keeping a diary now, because that's incredibly valuable. I've kept a diary since 1988. And I can pinpoint that any significant event that occurred in my professional and personal life, I've got it pinned to the paper. And if you've been doing that, that's great. Don't trust your memory as a filing cabinet. So why don't we get started with this? What we're going to do, I've prepared a few slides to make your note-taking a bit easier. But what I'm going to talk about, you're not going to find, you might find bits and pieces in a textbook or a video on the internet, but you're not going to find the six-pronged framework that I'm about to share with you that works incredibly well. Just ask any of the teams that I've led. It's amazing. It will be used to establish your legacy if you embrace these 6 points. And you've got to do all 6. If you do 5, it won't work. If you do 3, it won't work. So you've got to do the 6. And this is my framework that I've put together, learning from incredible leaders throughout the years. So why don't we get started with this? And what we're going to do is I'm going to put up the slides right here. So I'm a one-person show, so just bear with me. Here we go. So what we're going to do is start by talking a bit about leadership concepts and what is leadership. And leadership, as I define it, is inspiring and helping people perform at their full potential. The key in that is inspiring people, because that has the effect of perpetuity in any organization or in leading any team. Is what are you doing to inspire them? I'm going to talk in a moment about the mistake that people make, is that they set a high standard and then they don't get close to the detail, or they don't do the 6 things that I'm going to talk about. You can't just set the standard and expect everybody to engage and respond. So leadership is inspiring and helping people perform at their full potential. Just like a beautiful flower, it doesn't know any other way but to blossom to its full potential. So concept number 1 is a basic. You're going to find a lot of these concepts are very basic and simple in nature. Number 1 is to listen. Okay. A truly great leader that masters this concept listens to their people. Okay. They are able to understand what the purpose of their individual team members is. Okay. A lot of leaders think that, okay, if I just communicate the purpose of our organization, sure, that's important, but that's not my focus today. My focus is what you can do right now and ongoing in perpetuity to be a great leader. So understanding your team, understanding what their purpose is, not just your company's purpose. That'll come down the road, and I'm not covering that type of thing today. I'm not covering strategy or vision or any of that. You can look that up in a textbook, and you can turn off the Packard Network if you think you've got that down. This is stuff that really works to engage people. The reason why you want to understand your people and their purpose is so that you can put them in a position to win. Okay, that is vital, because many people are doing things in an organization they're not good at. So if you can understand your team members, you can place them in the right position. And I always treated my team like winners, because that's where we were going before we get there. I've talked so much before about making sure that you finish something before you start it. And if you can understand your people, you can treat them like winners, because that's what you're going to do, is to win. Principle number 2 is to build. Build is easy to say, difficult to do, but as with all things on the Packard Network, I'm going to simplify it for you, where all you really need is myself to do this. So, number 1, you've got to eliminate the wrong people, and don't waste time doing it. The clock is ticking, no matter what you're leading. If you've got the wrong people, follow your instincts, and you're going to have to cut ties with them, because it's not going to work. And you've got to recruit the right people. Okay, that is critical. Okay, if you're always churning out people and not recruiting talent, you're just going to be spinning your tires. So that is something that's vital. And then when you have the right people, you need to create an atmosphere that's the right atmosphere, so that the right people can blossom to their full potential. Just like that flower that we talked about in concept number 1. And that's vital. Okay, so building talent and bench strength is vital. So even if you're not hiring people, this concept is golden. And I found it so helpful because I was always recruiting, even if there was not an opening. And I would just carry that list, and it's in my diary, since 1988. And I've still got it. And many of the people in that diary, I didn't hire, but I was ready to, had we had the budget to do it. I always had the backup because of point one here, that if you have the wrong people, you're going to need this pipeline. So don't wait until you have the attrition. Line them up and get them ready. Concept number 3 is relationships. Okay. Very important leadership principle here. Treat every person like they're the most important person in the world. And let me tell you why. Because to them, they are the most important person in the world. It's not you. So if you treat your team like they're the most important people in the world, that will resonate, and you'll have extremely high engagement with your team. Okay, so when they get up every day, they view themselves as the most important person in the world. So if you treat them that way as a leader, you're going to get traction really early in the process. Give people enough guidance to make the decisions that you want to make, but here's the key: don't tell them what to do. Great leaders do not tell their people what to do. Sure, there might be some tactical maneuver that's required where you need your team to do something, but great leaders give people guidance and create the culture so that people can make the type of decisions that you want them to make. But then you've got to let them operate, let them breathe, let them be free, and don't tell them what to do. And then finally, on this one is always encourage them to do what's best. Everybody gets lost, right? I get lost, believe it or not. I've been lost a lot in my life and my career. But if you can encourage people to always do what they think is best, you're going to have good outcomes, because there will be times that they're alone and they have to make those decisions without you. And then, as I said a few minutes ago, don't just set a standard and walk away. You've got to engage and interact with everybody on your team, right? And if you're managing thousands of people, as I have, okay, it might not be possible. It's not possible to get one-on-one with everybody, but you can get in front of thousands of people, as I've done. You can get in smaller roundtable focus groups, as one of my first bosses, a fantastic leader, Mr. Herb Myers, did. He had these things called breakfast roundtable meetings. And Herb was able to know from those meetings what was going on in the front line. And it wasn't the only tactic that he used to do that. Okay. He went out in the field as well. And so Herb taught me the importance of getting outside of the steel building, if you're working in a corporate building, or right now everybody's in lockdown, many parts of the world. Okay. You've got to find ways to reach out to customers. Herb had so many cocktail events and regattas on San Francisco Bay to get to know clients. It wasn't just to appreciate clients. Sure, that was an objective, but it was to get to know How are we doing? It's an incredibly powerful leadership concept. The next is to persuade. You can't tell people what to do. You can't just sit in your chair and expect that people get things done. You've got to take chances. And I've talked a lot about the trade-offs of taking risk and not taking risk. And I spent 2 weeks on it in my daily videos a while back. And it's so important because you can curl up and sit in a corner and not take any risk in your life. And you might live to be 100 years old. But what kind of life is that? So learn to take risk. That's very important, okay? And one of the reasons why is that, this trade-off of playing it safe or taking a risk to become great. When you hit retirement and you look back, you don't want to say to yourself, I wish I would have done this because I could have been great. Do it now, but do it with your teams. It's a concept that works incredibly well for inspiring your team. All of this is driven around to get the roots in the ground like a big tree around inspiration. If you imagine the tree roots, okay, that's the inspiration that you want to draw there. Everyone on the team must feel, not you, but them, that they have a role to play. If you're going around feeling that, okay, yeah, I think everybody knows the importance, that's not good enough. You have to make sure as a leader that your team feels that they have an important role to play in the organization. Okay. I don't have time to tell you the story that you've already heard about the janitor at NASA, that he helped put a man on the moon, and the woman in the control room helped put a person on the moon. Okay. So everybody has an important role to play, but you as a leader have to make sure they feel that way. The next concept is motivate. Okay. Critical to inspiring a team. This is a formula that's critical. Attitude plus work equals performance. So many people, and I went a couple of decades in my career, hard worker, great attitude, but sometimes even I didn't connect this formula. Attitude at the right level plus work equals performance. Okay. You've got to be performance oriented. You've got to acquire, deepen relationships, and cultivate your customers and retain your customers. You can't churn them in and out. So the attitude of acquiring a customer and thinking about that customer in a very much a lifetime value of that customer, not just what they give you today. Okay, that automatically forces you to think about retention and client centricity. Attitude plus work equals performance. Remember and practice and embed that formula, and you'll be well on your way to motivating your teams. The compensation systems in companies and even in startups ultimately, right? Because it's all about profit and long-term sustainable profits, okay? If you don't perform, ultimately you're not going to get paid. Something to really think about. Expect to win and you're going to get knocked down. And if you get knocked down, don't give up. Keep that belief, because you will get knocked down. But expect to win every day. Act as if and expect to win. And you need to drive that with your people, engage with your people and your team, and that winning expectation must always be there. All of your team should be assuming that they've already won. Just like one of my heroes in life, Tiger Woods, in his prime, he knew he was going to win before he won. I think you get the point. You've got to make this happen. Give your team the feeling that if they don't do the job, it won't get done. Now, you can pull out the management books and you can get on Google and do all your research around, well, you give your people the feeling that if they don't do the job, then I'll find someone that can. That's not leadership. That's intimidation. And that's instilling fear, a fear culture, and it does not work. You give your team the feeling that if they don't do the job, that job won't get done. Nothing about taking people out. Okay. Herb Myers taught me this, and it was incredible. This is a critical point that most people get wrong. Okay. Live this concept and you'll win. And let your team know when they accomplish something, they're all going to share in the success. Everybody gets accolades because it is a team ultimately. And there's different ways of rewarding and recognizing. I'm not getting into that here, but you let them know this so that they can feel that when they have that success, they all share in the accolades. Okay, we're moving on to teamwork. These are in no particular order, by the way. As I mentioned at the beginning, we've got to do them all in order for this to work. Okay, chemistry. In building a team, chemistry is critical. Some people are great at one thing and not so great at another thing. You've heard the stories about the great salesperson that's done so well, and then their manager, not a leader, by the way, has promoted them to become a manager, and then they fail. Okay, we've all heard those stories. Remember, concept number one, understand your people and their strengths, and that's where they need to work. A great person by the name of Renee Carroll in the United Kingdom wrote a great book I recommend you read called Spike. And it's about a lot of things, but one of the things is finding out what you do best and do a lot of it. As a leader, you got to do the same thing with your people, and it's creating your own chemistry lab so that you get the right ingredients in the right places. It's balance as well. Not everybody can have everything at the same time. Sometimes you've got to build scale in your business before people can have some of the things that they would normally have in a large business. So you've got to balance those things and set the expectations so that nobody is ever surprised during a performance review, which, by the way, are phasing out. I don't believe in them. I believe that performance reviews should happen in real time. There's a great person you should follow on LinkedIn, Mr. Tracy Wilk. I just met him from an ex-colleague of mine, Mr. John Paul Engel, and Tracy did a post on LinkedIn a few weeks ago that talked about in Silicon Valley. I don't recall the company exactly, but basically the annual performance reviews, this particular company, they do performance reviews every day. and they do that includes peer reviews, and it's embedded in the culture. So you can research these things. You can read about these things. It's all part of learning. My point is, make sure that you're balanced in the approach so that you don't surprise people too much. Okay. If you give them a surprise, give them something good. Never surprise on the downside, or you lose your credibility as a leader. Somebody might look one way, might exhibit a lot of talent one way to a leader, but to another leader, maybe they're good at something else. Okay. You have a person that is, let's say they're not successful in sales, but let's say they're great in risk. Okay. Let's say you've got a person that's great in service, but they're not great in sales or business development, or salesperson is not great in marketing. I think you get the point. So when you're leading large teams, you have to sort through and have to realize and check the details so that you can best leverage the talent that you have on the team. That's a brief overview on the 6 leadership concepts, okay, that are here. I've covered them, okay. These work. You've got to do all 6. You can replay the video, but to sum up, what we have here is nothing is impossible if you have belief instilled in your team, not just you. Okay, that's critical. This formula that I presented about attitude plus work equals performance. I can tell you can have a great hard worker and a poor attitude or somebody demoralized, and you're not going to get performance. So if you're leading a business, let me tell you the power of this formula, and you're not performing, you're disappointed. You check one of these 2 factors, either the hard work effort or the attitude effort. And it could be a combination of both. That's the real world, right? But you check this, you apply this formula, and you'll have the answer as to why you're not performing. And when you are performing, lever it up. This formula works on the upside just as well. And finally, as with most things in life, shut yourself off from critics who sit on the sofa and they just do nothing but hope that you fail. You know, as I've been writing, you can see a lot of the things that I write on the Packard Network across all the social media channels, many of them anyway, the main ones. When I see somebody that's criticizing something that I do, it's really simple, my response. And you know what that is? I just get fired up and do more of it. I may wink at them and say, thank you very much. And I'm going to walk away and I'm going to do more of it. And if they come back and criticize even more, guess what? They're going to get the same wink, the same smile, and I'm going to be as stubborn as an ant. Okay. You can look up Jim Rohn, okay, on the internet, and the story of the ants. Have you ever tried to stop an ant? You can't do it. That ant will walk around you. It will attempt to go underground. It'll go anywhere. You water it down, you know, whatever happens, that ant is on a mission to succeed. You can't stop it. Be an ant, as Jim Rohn said. You be an ant, the story of the ant, and it's unstoppable. So I hope that these leadership concepts will prove useful. I know that they will. So the question is, will you stick with your textbook style of leadership, which might be incredibly effective. But if there's some areas of fine tuning, replace it holistically with these 6 concepts. Just put this framework into place. It's quite simple. If you have your team with you and they're engaged, then you're going to be able to achieve things that you never thought was possible from that team. And they will as well. You know why? Because they will start blossoming to their full potential. And that formula I showed you of what performance really is, attitude plus work, that formula will pay off exponentially for you. So that's it for today. I'm slightly over my half hour, and but I appreciate you tuning in to Minutes with Brett Live on the Packard Network. Next week, the cameras will be shifting over to Europe, and I'll be I'll have a guest from the United Kingdom with me, and I'll be announcing the times as usual early next week. So in the meantime, please follow me on LinkedIn. Please watch the videos if you want to learn something new, because if you think about it, all you really need in order to be successful is to tune in to the Packard Network and embrace the ideas, do things differently, and you do things, I'm sure, much better than I ever did. But learning new things and trying things that might be a little bit outside the box is incredibly powerful. I thank you for your time. I thank you for referring the Packard Network to all of your friends and family, and I look forward to sharing more with you very soon. Thank you very much. Have a terrific day in Asia, a terrific evening in North America. Good night.